Welcome back to Roll and Review, where we talk about all things nerdy and awesome. I'm Jim, and this is our movie review for The Last Jedi. Massive spoilers. I don't want to ruin anything for you. So if you haven't seen the movie, stop playing this. Go out, go see the movie. The story. The story is weird. The story structure itself, and I was talking with Peter, you guys have met. Me and him were talking, and the story structure for The Last Jedi was terrible. Let alone the movie itself is, the story itself is not what we're talking about. Just how it was structured and shown to us through the movie. You had three fairly independent stories. Two of them were kind of connected, but even so, they started to diverge, and the stories never kept each other in the loop, even though they were both acting towards the same ends. You were bouncing between Poe's story on the transport ship to Rey on the island with Luke, all to Finn, and then just randomly scrambling around those. And I didn't feel like it worked well. It felt choppy. It felt like I was just being thrown one way and thrown the other, and we weren't getting a good story in really any of them. Now, to break down the story itself, so we'll start with the main thing. The transport ship that they're on. You see them at the beginning. Poe is trying some craziness where he alone is flying towards a bunch of Star Destroyers, and he starts taking out all of the turrets on a ship they call the Dreadnought, which is not really explained, but you kind of know and you kind of see that it is something far greater than a Star Destroyer, and has these cannons on it, these giant laser cannons that just when bombarding either ships or a planet just do mass devastation. They just barely escape from their base, and Leia's like, "Poe, get out of here." He doesn't. He keeps going. They bring in a whole bunch of bombers. They end up destroying the Dreadnought, but they lose all of the bombers. They're escaping. They jump to light speed when they all get back in, and what do you know? The Empire follows them. The rebels are basically out of fuel. They start leaving, and they realize they can't jump to light speed because they'll get tracked, and they're about out of fuel. They can only jump one more time, and if they do that, they won't have an escape. And so they, just being slightly faster, they get out of effective range, and the story is, how do we survive? Because in the middle of an attack, everything thrown into chaos, Leia's knocked out of action, and you have this new Vice Admiral taking control. And honestly, her character isn't even worth remembering her name. She won't tell anyone what the plan is, so throughout the entire movie, not even just you as the viewer, but the entire crew is like, well, we're screwed. We're just running, and she hasn't told us anything. She has a plan. All she literally had to say to like anyone was like, "Hey, here's the plan. Getting close enough to get on the transports and go. We can you can cloak so they can't scan for you, and then I'll do something else to distract." It's kind of dumb. Like, it could be avoided easily if you have basic communication with anyone. You have, then because of that, you have Poe getting nervous, wanting to jump in something and go blow something up. So he sends Finn to go get someone who can, hide them so they can get onto Snoke's ship, disable its light speed tracking so that they can jump somewhere once and get away. And that story is so useless because
the entire Finn Rose subplot can basically be called the prequels, the subplot. It takes place on a planet that is really boring and nobody cares about. It contains this really ham-fisted moral point that, yeah, everyone can say, no shit, animal cruelty is bad. It even takes its entire point of existing and just throws it out the window by trying to find a slicer that can break into the dreadnought when they just happen to find one in a prison cell they get thrown into. At the end of the day, this is going to be the scenes that you skip forward when you're watching this movie.
Then you have Rey. Rey doesn't seem to grow throughout her story, which is the biggest issue. There is no character growth for Rey. She finds out that there are ancient texts. She doesn't get a chance to read them. She really doesn't learn anything of worth. And then she leaves because Luke won't like come or help her or help Leia or like any of that. He's just like, get out, and he's cut himself off from the Force, and it's just poor.
This is a point where I very much disagree with Jim. I think Rey does have a nice character arc, going from someone who just is a naive child on some backwater desert planet to someone who has seen a few things and actually stands by some principles and what they believe in. This is conveyed very well in the Force bonds between both Kylo and Rey and the learning from Luke Skywalker. Though Luke Skywalker is in a dark place and you can see the mistakes that he's made and how those mistakes have beaten him, it shows for a very good transition to how the younger generation can learn from those mistakes and move forward, just as Luke did with the mistakes that Obi-Wan had made.
The positive things I can say though are Poe and Finn actually have character development within their stories. It was because Poe starts off and literally I think the exact quote or close enough from Leia is, "You think you can just jump in an X-Wing and blow stuff up to solve problems." And he ends up realizing, because he tries that multiple times, that it is not the way to do this. That's not the way to solve all the problems. And he kind of has this like growth where like he's starting to understand that there are other ways to solve problems besides just blowing things up, especially because on like that first attack, they lost so many resources in losing all the bombers and so many X-Wings and A-Wings that it really wasn't worth it. Yeah, they destroyed a dreadnought, but it really didn't help them out in the long run.
Okay, one thing about this has been really bugging me. They make a big deal about Poe wasting all the bombers and lives taking out the dreadnought, but if that dreadnought had followed them into hyperspace, they'd be dead. There'd be no movie. This movie would have ended 20 minutes into it. Just want to point that out. I can't believe no one brought that up.
Finn has some great character growth because the minute he wakes up and he realizes the shit that they're in, he literally just tries sneaking onto an escape pod and leaving. He grows to the point through all of this where he can actually like stand up and face his fears and stand up to the First Order, and actually he tries to give himself to save the rest, even though Rose stops him. But he had that growth of literally just trying to run away to actually facing his fear, facing the First Order, and willing to give himself for the rebellion and his friends. All right, so next, the Force. I mean, it's a Star Wars movie. We're going to see the Force. So for the first time, we see a very active use of the Force from Leia, which I thought was cool.
I also really liked Leia's use of the Force. However, I do have a critique on how they shot that scene. I think if they had stuck to close angle shots instead of the wide shot, you would have avoided the now meme on the internet as of Leia looking like Mary Poppins. I think if you had kept them in close shots, you could have gone and explored her growth and struggle in the Force, rather than just kind of looking like she was just flying through space.
Luke, on the other hand, presents himself with the Force in a really cool new Force power, which I don't know if we actually have a term for it yet. I've been calling it astral projection because I've also watched Doctor Strange recently, and that's how they call it. But he literally manifests himself on another planet to save the rebels by giving a distraction long enough for them to escape, and also getting a chance to ask forgiveness from Leia and kind of have closure there, which I really liked. It was an absolutely beautiful scene. It was one of the best scenes in the movie. It was where Luke walks in, Leia's sitting there, he sits down with her, and he apologizes, and there's this closure, and then he stands up and walks out, and Kylo, being the child he is, and he literally has all these AT-ATs firing upon Luke. And one of the best moments of like a screw you after everything. And it's like a good like minute and a half, 2 minutes of just continuous fire. Luke walks out, brushes off his shoulder, and that Kylo comes down and tries fighting him. Um, and we see Luke again, spoiler, Luke dies. This took so much out of him. He is literally so exhausted. You have this awesome moment with the two sons calling back to his silhouette on Tatooine, with the two sons in the background, looking off. He has the same moment, and the cloak drops. He's gone. He becomes one with the Force.
Okay, the second most frustrating thing after the Finn-Rose subplot was how they handled Snoke. In The Force Awakens, Snoke was made out to be this big bad of the Star Wars universe, said to predate both the Galactic Civil War and the Clone Wars, and before the start of the prequels, he was supposed to be one of the most powerful characters we have ever encountered. And they Indiana Jones him. Kylo does a little trick with his lightsaber, chops Snoke in half, and he's dead. Yep, he's dead. The movie did absolutely no justice to Snoke, so I will do absolutely no justice to the movie talking about it.
However, following that came the best fight scene in the movie. Rey and Kylo fighting side by side against Snoke's Royal Guard. They're the guys in red, but upgraded. It's absolutely insane. The best fight of the movie. That was really cool. The purple-haired chick that I talked about earlier, the Vice Admiral, she does something we haven't seen before, which has brought up some questions by a lot of people, like, if you could do this, why wouldn't you just do this like all the time, or automate something like this, or like, hey, Death Star, why do we need to like run along the trench and shoot something into a hole as small as a womp rat, which is like a 1 in 1,000 shot, and hope that it goes straight down this shaft to the reactor core to blow up the Death Star? Because in a last-ditch effort to save these fleeing transports who are under heavy attack, she turns the cruiser and light speeds right through Snoke, this is Snoke's ship, and actually kills like 5 more Star Destroyers at the same time. And it was so cool. It was a beautiful shot. It was amazing how it looked. It was amazing how everything paired together. And even though her sacrifice, I felt didn't redeem her, which I think the movie tried to like kind of make happen, because she was kind of a bitch before, and now all of a sudden she's self-sacrificing. She's gonna do this for everyone, and I don't think it redeemed her. I still think she was a shitty character and made terrible mistakes. But the shot, absolutely beautiful. I'll give one more. Yoda shows up as a Force ghost, because Luke's gonna destroy everything that is the Jedi, the last remaining books of the Jedi, and this tree, and he pauses for a second, and in Yoda, just like being Yoda, he can use the Force, and causes, basically it's Force lightning, but from the sky, just comes down and ignites what Luke said he was going to burn. And Luke, just kind of horrified, he goes in to try to save the books and gets like pushed out by the flames. And he has this great moment with Yoda where it's like essentially one final teaching from Yoda, where he can kind of get brought back on the right track and realizes that, like, because this is post, the Jedi need to die. He realizes that Jedi aren't a bad thing, and that no matter what, like, Rey was going to be a Jedi. She knew, like, she can use the Force, she can do all this, and it kind of this understanding that, like, listen, it's going to be okay. Anyway, to wrap this up, on a scale of 10, this is like a 6.75, maybe a 6.5. It's a D. It's a solid D. It just dropped a whole bunch of stuff that Abrams set up in The Force Awakens. It was disappointing, but at the same time, there were some really amazing parts to it. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. I think this movie is so big and there's so much to talk about it we got to talk about it down in the comments below. Because I can't talk about everything in the video, and there's stuff I'm inevitably gonna miss or that I'm thinking about right now, but I can't add it. So yeah, tell me what you think. I'm giving it a D, a 60%, a 6.5 or 6.75. Tell us what you think down in the comments below. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below and hit that bell notification so that you get notified when we post new videos and do live streams and do all of that fun stuff. Should be a bunch of videos coming out this Christmas break, since we actually have a little bit of break from work and school that we can do a whole lot more. Don't forget to hit that like button, even if you don't agree with us, because this is going to lead us to some great discussion. Anyway, thanks for coming. May the Force be with you.